Hey guys, we hope everyone is well and feeling some love right now, despite it being a rough world out there. We love you, give yourself some love, and love those around you. We all need it. Speaking of love, love in its truest form is sometimes more of an initiation. In this week's two-part conversation, Zach and I sit down with married couple Larissa Conte and Michael Kahn Armstrong, who both do their own incredible work in the healing and spiritual spaces. We explore what being in spiritual partnership means. We talk about navigating our trauma and shadows as sovereign beings and then bringing those things into relationship. We discuss the power of erotic energy, and they even turn the tables on us to reflect on our own love. In part one, we get into the roots of their stories, their fated journeys leading them to each other, how nature, somatic intelligence, and deep self-inquiry shaped who they are and how they love. Then in part two, we move into the fire. We talk erotic somatica therapy, which is basically role-playing sex stuff, and we'll tell you more about that. The entanglement of our trauma with our erotic energy and how it finds its way into our psyche. And how to work together in partnership when our deepest shadows want a seat at the dinner table. It's honest, it's personal, it's about making a choice to commit yourself to doing the work in order to receive the gift of having a soul-level love, growing with each other, not just beside each other. Welcome to our first double date episode. And unlike most first dates, we go deep pretty quick. But that's a big green flag from the disco perspective, and we're ready for date number 2. So join us in the Love Fest, and welcome to Disco.
Disco, the podcast.
Disco, the podcast.
Welcome, Larissa Conte and Michael Kahn Armstrong. We're so happy to have you here with us.
Hi, guys.
Hi, so good to be here.
Thank you so much for having us. This is going to be fun.
Yes, we go way back. We met at Telepathy Camp. Our listeners know about that because it's been a theme in this podcast over the last couple of weeks. Larissa, you do a lot of work with power literacy, helping people understand how to transmute shadows into gifts and how power flows through them first and then flows through systems later, ultimately impacting systems. Michael, you have an incredible story as well. You have an artistic background and you have experimented with psychedelics and you've channeled and you've written a book based upon your channeling called The Eternal Dragon, which helps people understand how to work with archetypes and how to reveal what their soul already knows. I know we're going to be getting into both of these things in depth today, but just for listeners, I think before we embark on your journey of partnership together, they should know a little of you individually. So, Michael, starting with you at a high level, what has your spiritual journey been like to this point, and how is that informing what you're doing right now?
Spark notes. We know, we could go
Spark
deep
notes.
into this,
Yeah.
and we hope to at some point.
Totally.
But yeah, give us the elevator pitch.
Yeah, awesome. This is great. And this is a great challenge for me because I can struggle with there's this huge array of information and how do I distill it down into a little nugget.
Right.
So Zach, that was actually one of the best intros I've ever heard that is distilling what I do into one sentence. So. Awesome.
So that was not written down. That was
Just undefined throat chakra coming through.
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess I think I always had a sense from when I was very young that just this kind of pervasive sense of I don't think this reality is what all the adults are pretending it is. that everybody's walking around like this is all normal and nobody actually understands what's happening. And I think I was blessed also with having adults in my life who kind of confirmed that. Who are yeah, nobody knows what's going on, and who gave me permission. I've had ups and downs in my childhood like everybody, but my parents gave me permission to be my own person, that they didn't try to put me in a box. They were very conscientious about that. And they were you get to explore and become whoever you want to be. And I think because of that, my life has kind of always been oriented to getting oriented, to figuring out what is this reality? And then that just took me down a kind of a journey of exploration that led through a lot of things and took me to psychedelics, took me to energy martial arts practice, took me to First of all, it started with filmmaking. I went to film school. That was my first career trajectory. And what I didn't anticipate going into that originally was that in going and making documentary films, I ended up going and spending time with all of these really interesting people and learning a lot and getting plugged into these different organizations, different cultural milieus, connecting with different teachers, and then getting way, way immersed in all that material more than people who are even like doing these programs, because then I would edit it and spend hours and hours and hours going over the footage over and over again. And I started to realize, well, I'm actually gaining a lot of wisdom and I'm developing as a person like massively from this whole process.
Yeah.
And then I think it wasn't until we met, which was in 2018, 19, and Larissa was starting building her first program. And she invited me to come and help her facilitate this first program that she ran, which in the beginning I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, why are you inviting me to do this? Like, you believe in me. I guess that will give me some strength to be able to do this. And then as we got going with it, I was like, oh, this is actually really native to me. And I've been doing all of this cultivation work for a really long time and helping people and supporting them for a long time. But now it's becoming something more professional. And then kind of in tandem with that, that coincided with a period of getting a lot deeper with my psychedelic practice and really starting to see that as more than even just a healing practice, which is a huge component of it, but also this vehicle for exploring things at a different level, for touching things in the multiverse and bringing back information from that can then be a gift for other people. And so then that became this very serious is not really the right word, but just a very devoted practice for me. Which then fruited into this work called The Eternal Dragon, which is a archetype card deck and a book about it. And I'll leave it at that. That's kind of a little long, but that's the little spark notes.
That was perfect. That was perfect. And I want to, I guess, background as well, backing up that you two are married.
We're married, yes.
Wow!
Yeah.
This is like,
We just hang out together a lot.
Yeah. Yes. So partnership, like you guys are, coming through life, obviously with your own separate individual journeys in spirituality and exploring consciousness and the work that you do, but also in partnership with each other too. So, Larissa, I guess with that, if you could share a little bit about what that journey looked like for you and the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, happy to. It's, having the painting behind us and seeing a specific place on Earth that I grew up sailing. I think in a lot of ways, my spiritual journey unconsciously began with the love of my family and with the immense sensation in encountering the ocean and nature. Like as a little creature, I could just feel the bigness of the waves and I could feel the bigness of the wind. And I would be so stirred by the changing of the leaves in autumn and the crunch of them and like the temperature of the air changing. And, when I was little, I was just like, oh, that's because nature's awesome. Like, yes. But then my more conscious spiritual awakening began at a precise moment when I had just turned 22 and my beloved dad, who had had a stroke and then a second stroke that put him in a coma.
Wow.
I received a call after returning to school when it was uncertain how long he would be in a coma. I received a call from my mom and my uncle letting me know that he had a third stroke in the part of his brain that controlled his heart and lungs and that he was going to die sometime in the next 48 hours.
Wow.
And this happened. So in this moment, I had a simultaneous initiation into the grief portal. I learned what wailing was. I collapsed onto the pavement at the busiest place on my college campus. And I also had my first out-of-body experience.
Wow.
And it took me until like just recently to realize that something I've described as, and then I was above myself, like watching people flow around me.
Wow.
I was like, oh, yeah, that was an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
And so I was in the midst of doing my master's degree, investigating the origin of the belief in Western civilization that humans are separate from nature. And that moment was like my lived demonstration of my master's thesis, which I didn't end up writing because I was like, nope, it happened. Because I was wailing and I watched from above, hundreds and then thousands of people just passed by me and no one stopped.
Mhm, mhm.
And I was like, this is the evidence of our disconnection, but this is not who we are. This is not what the human family has always been, is currently, or needs to be into the future. And so my dad basically gave birth to me for a second time when my heart took the reins in that moment and began this insatiable quest to find out, what does connection feel like? What does connection in self, with other, with life look like? How do we cultivate culture in all of its like many threads of connection? And that ended up leading me to, similar to the list that Michael shared, I like this moment exploded synchronicity in my awareness. I learned the skill that I understand as wayfinding starting then, where my wisdom, my heart, my body sensing was just guiding me through life. And it was like, what am I curious about? What's bringing me alive? What am I called to? What do I maybe not understand, but I'm going to go towards anyway? And over time, I realized that all the threads that I was seeking out in this quest to understand connection were tied together with a theme of power, with a theme of wattage, with the theme of like, oh, what is the subtle force of the wind blowing across the ocean? And what is the profundity of the tides and the wattage that we feel in our beings that makes us quake, that makes us summon courage, that makes us fall in love, that makes us tip into not our best selves and do things we wish we didn't do? I realized like, oh, those are the forces that I'm most fascinated in the world. And then I fell off a waterfall and I almost died. And then things got really real. And I was like, oh, okay, I thought I had like hit the bottom, but now we're just like going way further down. And then it became personal and became even more visceral. And my spiritual journey became about resuscitating myself and literally bringing myself back from the dead. So it went from soul searching with an ache to heal my dad to then like, oh no, this is not a luxury. This is actually a necessity for my well-being, to stay in this body and on this planet. And that also gave birth to my body of work, to our love. And it's like a perfect demonstration of how the gift is in the wound.
And when you say you fell off a waterfall, you literally mean you fell off a waterfall, right? Like this isn't like
Yeah.
a metaphor for some like spiritual.
This is Golden Gate Park, January 10th, 2011, stood up too quickly.
She took me to the spot. She took me on a tour, like walked me through her whole journey of like falling.
Yeah.
It's a real place where this happened.
Thankfully it was a man-made waterfall, so the water was shut off when I fell, or I would have drowned. But I stood up too quickly. I had a low blood pressure moment, and then I lost my balance, and I fell 10 feet out and down onto a boulder. And I bounced 4 times.
Oh
And
my
ruptured your
God.
spleen. And
Yeah, and I landed on my spleen first, with this is the easiest organ to bleed to death. And Michelle, the way you're reacting is how most people's mirror neurons react when they hear this story, but most people don't make that noise out loud. So then I would tell this story and I'd be like, well, everyone's uncomfortable, so like, let's keep going. Like, I'm alive, here we are, it's okay. But yes, so that was a big encounter of power.
No kidding. How long ago was this?
2011.
This was 2011.
So then
Okay.
what did your recovery look like? And then how did that abet your continued spiritual, I don't know, deepening, awakening? And I know just from our history, Michael, you had also I almost died. And then here I am becoming more spiritual moments. I didn't know this about you, Larissa. It's interesting that is mirrored in both of you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's one of our connections,
We
is
both had
having
a
a
fall.
fall. I fell a shorter distance and had vastly more
Much
severe outcome.
Yeah.
And Michael fell a longer distance and was okay.
Yeah.
And that's how life just works out sometimes. But what's relevant to my spiritual development, and other people have often reflected this back to me, that I basically like fell into the underworld when I fell off the top of the waterfall. I fell into a very dark place. I experienced excruciating physical pain to the
Yeah.
point that taking painkillers was like eating sprinkles. I was like, nothing. This isn't doing nothing for
Mm.
what's in my body.
Wow.
And so in the experience of that trauma, my being came into contact with all of this physical sensation, and then my spirit and my psyche and my mind had all these reactions to what was happening, going broke, hospital bills, needing to learn how to heal, being bedridden for like hundreds and then over 1,000 days in my adult life. And um I I learned to distill this and then also to link it to our love.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
it wasn't very fun being in a human body for me for
Mhm.
a long time.
Yeah.
And it was about like 6 years of really intense physical suffering that grew me. Oh my goodness, did it grow me? It's just like every day is like a dojo of like, can I
Wow.
do this?
Yeah.
Like, can I get to the kitchen? There were like so many days in my life, right? I experienced food insecurity because I couldn't even get out of bed.
Right.
And so it was just like making it to the kitchen. I'd be like, oh, I didn't eat today because I couldn't move.
Mm.
So that I give that just as a moment because so much of this was like, oh,
Mm.
how far can I fall? And I did a lot of meditating on falling
Hmm.
because we talk in our culture about falling being something catastrophic.
Mm-hmm.
And amazingly, in this conversation, falling is also the way you get to
Mm.
love.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
true. Yeah, you fall in love.
Fall in
You
Mhm.
fall in love.
Yeah, there's like, I
And so
must give up control of, yeah.
yes, and
Yeah.
so much of my healing journey, and I realized that like a couple years in, and I just meditated on it. It's like, could I trust that life was not abandoning me in this unfolding? Could I trust that this is maybe even life loving me in this unfolding? And then I got to this point where I was like, no, 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 and that point happened so many times. I
Of
was like,
course.
I hate this.
Right.
And I also got to this point where with life, I was just like, listen, I am here in service of the greater good. I have gone through the underworld. I've done all of this BS in a physical embodied training. And frankly, I don't want to keep going unless you serve up the person who's going to walk with me through life in love.
Yeah.
And it's funny when you think you can deliver an ultimatum to life, but that's basically what I did. And it wasn't an ultimatum. It was more it was like a resolve happened in my being,
Right.
because I realized I'd been trying to pursue this healing goal, and the goalpost just kept moving further into the future. And I was like, well, you know what makes every day worth living, no matter what is happening, is love.
Yeah.
And so in my imaginal space, because I have like my fall also coincided with a ton of my spiritual gifts activating. When I was bedridden, I started doing out of body travel and having like visionary experiences,
Yeah.
which makes sense. And is often, that's actually like in a lot of research, it correlates with very traumatic events because the spirit doesn't want to be in the body. And I was like, oh yeah, I get that. I don't want to, I'm good on there. Like, I don't want to experience this. So I started having these very activated third eye experiences. And so one thing I did was I created in the imaginal realm this huge altar and set out all these ancestral foods from my family lineage, like the most time intensive, valued, holiday only foods, and then like flowers and incense, like all this. I just made this huge spread. There's like, this is my offering, life.
Which we've done in real life too, by the way.
Yeah.
Make
Yeah.
actual huge ancestor spread plates.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I didn't know, I hadn't pre-choreographed this. I just sat down and I was like, with the sincerity of my heart, I want to keep going on whatever is being asked of my life in this lifetime. And also, I really want to do it with the person who can walk with me and meet me. I want to feel met. This like full surface area, full wattage. Not you are the same as me, but you meet me and you uplift me. And I was like, that's my true heart's desire. And I reached down my hand to one side, and there was this like silk sash, and I tied it around my eyes. And I reached down my other hand, and there was a bow. And then I reached back, and there was an arrow. And I just like, I like pulled it back.
This is in the imaginal realm, right?
This is all in the imaginal realm, in case anyone lost the thread. Yeah, all in the imaginal realm. Thanks for
At first, I
clarifying
thought
there.
like there could be like a like you know
silk.
silk.
I mean,
Totally.
you've got stuff
Totally.
like that. in
Those
our
things
house.
exist.
Even both, I
But it was
thinking
more
a
like I
feather
was
bow.
reaching and it was revealing. And so I reached and I was like, oh, look at this. And I was
Sure.
like, well, this is what you do with this. This is what you do with this piece.
Yeah.
And then I just like drew back the arrow and I said, in the imaginal realm, may this find the heart of the one who is meant to walk with me in whatever time. And may they arrive as quickly and clearly as possible. And may it be unmistakable. May you make it unmistakable when they arrive. And it was unmistakable.
Okay, so let's talk about that. About you coming together and how this was revealed to you unmistakably.
Yeah, the classic. What was your meet cute?
Meet cute. What a great phrase. Thank you, guy.
Yeah. So then I need to keep going for a bit with
Yes.
a story about a puma. Of course, you find your person through a puma. So a very dear friend of mine and I had a spiritual errand to fulfill, to find a left front puma paw print for me to get tattooed on the back of my heart.
Which I think you should preface it. This kind of way of being is like set up from your RDNA. You know, it wasn't just like, we're going to go do it. It's like you've had some training.
I had like cultural precedents for prayer, for asking of, or like listening to calls from the life web, from recognizing that intelligence and medicine and wisdom inhabits all forms of life, things like that.
But
Yeah.
also animal tracking specifically, and like sensing what's happening energetically, like through the animals on the landscape. It was this training you did for
You
2 years.
had puma tracking experience.
I had animal
not
tracking
Bruno specifically,
experience.
but
Yeah.
animals, yeah.
Animal
Yeah.
tracking experience.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I didn't give my list of like animal tracking and qigong and
Yeah,
leadership
all the
coaching,
stuff.
all the things, all the power
Yeah.
forms. Yeah. So animal tracking was one of
What
these
year
things.
was this? Like 2017?
This happened 2018.
Okay.
Spring of 2018.
Yeah.
And we actually can't remember like when the bow and arrow and the puma moment. It's sometime before we met. So we do know that. We don't know the order of those two things. But so in March of 2018, my friend Scott Davidson, who is a wonderful animal tracker and fellow rites of passage guide, he and I audaciously were like, you know what? 10 days from now, we're going to go on a trip and try to find a puma paw print for me to get tattooed on the back of my heart. The short version of this story is we tuned into not just pumas in California, but we invited like a particular puma to call to us. And we just said, show us where you are. And it was showing up in eucalyptus groves at night and walking on sand dunes and then moving through meadows and then being like by the ocean. And I was like, where is this? And living in California, those things are not that weird to all intercept. But we ended up navigating our way down to Southern California.
And when you say
Yeah.
showing, like this is, you're just getting this like intuitively,
Telepathically communicated from the puma.
telepathically. Okay.
Yeah.
Just making it clear to everybody
Yeah.
who might be curious. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Like images. Like images would flash through my mind. So I would be
Okay.
dreaming and it would show up, or I would be out walking to work and like a flash would come of like whiskers like moving through very tall grass. And it was not structured. It was like, I'm ready for my images. It was just being open to
Yeah.
receive.
Yeah.
And then gathering the fragments. So we went down to Southern California. We arrive and and I'll like tell the short version of the story because we have more fascinating things to talk about, even though the story is very potent. The main thing we needed to do was to basically become vibrational matches.
Yep.
Because we weren't, if you go out on like a safari, you're in a Jeep, you're with someone who's a professional tracker. It's kind of like a museum tour in nature. You don't have to do anything personally to have contact with that wild animal. Whereas we're on our feet in a forest, and what we realized was like, oh, we actually who do we need to become to be able to meet a puma?
Mm-hmm.
And so we spent like 2 hours, I think, that morning doing all of these like internal tunings and adjustments and conjuring what would it mean for me to be in my own lion heart.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, it was a huge learning about power of like, can I meet this powerful being without projecting on it? And like, listeners and friends, like, listen to what I say in the lens of love as well. It was like, I'm going to try and find a powerful being who I want to meet. Can I meet it without projecting? Can I meet it from my own sovereignty and my clarity without grasping at it or cowering away from it?
Mhm.
It's like this middle posture. And so then we went out on the land, and spoiler, within like 90 minutes of us heading out, Scott found the first track.
Wow.
And then we spent the rest of the day and we found like hundreds of tracks over a creek, across a meadow, through a muddy trail. And the whole time I felt like I was walking to meet my mate. I felt like I was walking to meet my lover. And so it was this incredible experience. It was like totally life transforming and mind blowing and all these things.
Which, by the way, if for people who haven't like spent a lot of time looking for animals in the woods, like we've done a lot of this together. I've never seen a puma paw print. Like it's quite very rare to even see one. So it's
I
like
imagine, yeah.
a huge deal.
Yeah, thank you. And so then if you look at Michael's face while I tell this part of the story,
Puma.
then 6 weeks later, we're at Mount Shasta for a medical Qigong training. I'm there as a student. Michael's there doing film, and we have met before.
Mm-hmm.
We have met before. We're both dating people at the time, and I could not even see Michael. I was like, oh, Michael, I wasn't like, wow, what an incredible being, because he was like concealed from me.
Yeah.
So then we're at Mount Shasta at the morning, this medical Qigong retreat, and his face is scanning the room, like for light angles, because he's set up with his tripod and everything. And as his gaze passes mine, a puma face jumps out of his face energetically. And I get hit with the largest ball of energy and wattage and information I'd ever experienced in my life to that point. And I'm just sitting there like, I both know what this is and I don't know what this is, and I'm terrified by what this is, and I'm turned on by what this is, and I'm surrounded by the most energetically sensitive people, which when we met you two at telepathy camp, we realized our medical Qigong training was the first telepathy camp we'd ever gone to, because it's like where you're sensing people's energy and thought forms and things. And so I was like, ah! Oh God, don't lose it, and where I like just summoned my courage with finding a frigging puma paw print, and like the possibility, by the way, because of the rains, we found that paw print within 36 hours or minutes to when the puma had been there. So it was like, we were close to that being. And I was more freaked out about what came out of Michael. So that's my like beginning of this. And Michael had a very different experience.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, and it's always funny doing the back and forth and how are we both experiencing this differently? The preamble for me is I had been in a quite turbulent relationship for like 8 years, for most of my 20s. And I was with this partner who gave me so many gifts. It was such a wonderful being in so many ways, and was in a pretty deep hole of like depression and energetic stuckness. And we both of us found out 5 years into this 8-year relationship that she had undiagnosed Lyme disease for 15 years already
wow.
at that point.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
she was, what we thought were just kind of like these like emotional traumas. It was like, oh, you're actually have a bacterial infection that's like crushing your life.
Wow.
And so I spent, and it's very interesting. So, I spent 8 years basically in this caretaking role. And that took a huge toll on me, and like a lot of things in my life just kind of like diminished and fell away, and it was kind of this period of sinking into a pretty dark hole over that period. um when I came out of that, I was in this feeling of just being really liberated, and I had nothing. It's like all my work, my career had kind of tanked, and a lot of my friends had fizzled away, but I had this feeling of like, oh, I'm free, like I'm now in this space where like anything is possible.
Yep.
And around that time, I met a friend, and this friend was like, "Oh, have you ever heard of these books called The Ringing Cedars?" And I was like, "No, what is that?" And he was like, "Oh, there's these Russian books, and it was like, written by this woman who lives out in the wilderness and is like, talking about extraterrestrials and past lives and stuff." And I was like, "That sounds cool. Like, I want to read that." And he was like, "Great, I want someone to talk about it with." And he just came to my house and gave me all 9 books from this series, and I devoured them in about 2 weeks. And the story, it's amazing to me that more Americans haven't heard of them, and especially in these kind of spiritual circles, because it's like one of the most virally spreading books of all time, basically. It's like
What is it called
hugely
again? I want to write it down.
The Ringing Cedars of Russia.
Okay.
And I think there's a few reasons. I mean, it's written originally in Russian, and it's like kind of for the Russian people, but it's like it's for the world basically. But basically, this Russian entrepreneur had this job like ferrying goods on a cruise ship up into northern Siberia. And he ends up meeting this woman who lives out in the wilderness with no house, no clothes except to go into the town, and has this like really intimate relationship with all the animals around her. And her family are intensely psychic in all of these different ways and are telepathically communicating with people all over the planet. And she meets Vladimir, the author. And in the first book, she's like, "I'm going to channel 9 books to you, and you're going to write it all down, and it's going to become world famous, and it's going to inspire people into this back to the land movement." And in the first one, he's like, "You're crazy, but I'm enraptured, so I'll like do what you say."
Yeah. I'll come once. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll try it.
Books later.
Yeah. And then it all came true.
Wow.
And it's like hundreds of millions of copies sold worldwide with no marketing and just like word of mouth. People are just like, it just caught fire. And then there's a huge back to the land movement in Russia. And side note, it made me realize how propagandized we are against Russians. And I was like, oh, there's this enormous like spiritual nature connection movement in Russia that we know nothing about as
Right.
Americans, because we don't like hear about that dimension of that country. But and so in the course of the books, she says all this stuff about all this wild sci-fi things, but the core of it is basically there's the most important thing that she keeps hammering home is every family needs a homestead that is their land. That's 3 to 5 acres. And it's not only to be self-sustaining and have food, but you plug energetically into the land so that the plants start to feel things through your feet when you're walking around on the dirt, and they produce whatever nutrients and vitamins that you need, so you never need medicine. And then your genetic energy gets plugged into the land, and then you'll reincarnate into the same family line over and over again that's like connected to this place. And so there's this kind of message of it's all about human beings connected to a specific place that you're plugged into. And it was just like, wow, okay, I just received this transmission of what the future could look like, and also what the past maybe looked like, before, modern civilization rewrote history or whatever.
Yeah.
I finish reading these books, I close the last page of it, and drive straight up to Mount Shasta, where this Qigong retreat happens. And so it was this very direct, like, and I love, obviously at the time, we had a bunch of steps to get to where we are, but in retrospect, it was so clearly like, okay, I got the download, and here's the person. Go do it.
Yeah.
You're ready.
Yeah.
You're ready.
Did Larissa's face transform into that of a Russian mystic?
She did not.
You are an exceptional interviewer. No one has asked that.
No one ever
before.
asked that. No.
It's all the open throat,
That's right.
the open throat.
That's the straight channel. But I will add, because because it can be easy to hear. We were just with a bunch of friends from the Jumpsuit Verse at a gathering in Colorado, and shout out to Sarah B. Stern, who when we told her our story and what I'm about to add to our story, she was like, "I love how cool you both are and how uncool you both are."
Yeah.
Because like all this lead up,
Yeah.
we are uncomfortable, awkward humans, effing it up. We're like, so I see the puma jump out of his face. I'm trying to not hyperventilate in public as we're starting this 20-person week-long retreat. It's the first morning. And then we have this dance during the retreat where it's like so record skippy. It's just like
And for me, it was like, whoa, okay, there's a charge, and like, oh, but I feel like I remember you. But are we just like kind of really deep friends, or is there something else? Like, it was just like, what is happening?
Yeah, which like anyone who's ever been turned on by another person in a loud way can relate to, because you're like, oh, like I'm hot, I'm kind of sweating, I feel like an idiot, like are the wrong words gonna come out of my mouth?
Is that how you feel around me?
Yeah, and I like cannot wait to turn the tables and ask you. But this is what happens when we come in contact with both erotic and love power, that the wattage of that power moving through our system arrests us, and it unnerves us, and it agitates us, as much as it also can invite us to become more courageous than we've ever been, to show more of our heart, put forward more of our honesty, and become like less controlling and just say, I'm an invitation. This is the invitation. So there was this moment where Michael and I were in the woods at this retreat, and we were standing outside my tent, and he was like, what do you want? And internally I heard, to hold you and be held by you.
No.
And I was like, oh my God, I can't say that. I like, this is like, holy shit, I can't say it. So this is me, at this developmental moment in my life. And I have I'm just like the loading wheel. I'm like blanked out, like sitting with that information. He was like, you want me to come inside your tent, don't you? And then and to which I got like so angry, and I was like, you're so presumptuous, like this. And then we like exploded apart.
Yeah, and which is this other thing, because she heard it as me like doing a power move on her.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, I was like, I'm too timid to ask directly if I can come in your tent. And so I'm going to ask, do you want me to come in your tent? And then
You guys, I cannot.
and then she's like, fuck you. I'm like, what did I do?
So this is so relatable, because like humans, we're all we're just like fallible and we fuck it up.
Right.
But then I drove away from the retreat and my body was screaming at me. Was like, this is a soul level violation. Like, you must swerve the car. You must change the trajectory. Like, you must choose differently. And my body would not stop screaming at me. Days. And so I get home and it's still like throwing a tantrum at the worst violation. And so then I call him and I tell him what I actually heard.
Wow.
And then he's like, oh.
So you did want me to come into your tent.
And he's like, I knew it.
Back with the zingers.
Oh my God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you guys didn't know each other though, right? Like
We had met a couple times. And interestingly, just side note, so Larissa had been working with this Qigong teacher who I was making YouTube videos for and doing
Our friend David Beaudry.
long term. Shout out to David for introducing us.
Yes.
And Larissa had come and done a guest workshop at a 3-day weekend retreat that had happened like 6 months prior to this.
Okay.
And she did an erotic energy thing that was very tame. It was just like, okay, go into your erotic energy and you walk around the room and make eye contact with people in the room.
Ooh.
And I was still in this prior relationship at the time. And it was so triggering for me. It was just like way too, like I had to sit down, like I couldn't participate in the exercise. And that moment actually precipitated for me, like, oh, this whole, like this kind of connection and feeling, not just with Larissa, but with this whole community would not be possible if my girlfriend was here. And it made me see how much that relationship was limiting my life, which then led to this disintegration of that.
Mhm.
And funnily enough, Larissa actually had a rebirthday party, which was a celebration of coming through this like threshold of her healing journey, and asked me to film it. And
Cool.
it would have
Before the
happened
Puma, before the altar,
before any of this.
before Mount Shasta. I was like, Michael, can you film my rebirth?
And it was
party?
this like I saw the video of it later. It was this like erotic alchemical transformation dance performance that Larissa put on, which was just like when I watched it later, I was like, I would not have been able to handle that. Like, no. But we figured out at her rebirthday party was maybe the same day that I broke up with that ex-girlfriend. Or like within a couple day window. So it was like life just being like, all right, and we're setting it up. The timing is going to go like this. Okay, now you're both ready. Cool.
Wow.
I'm like, just because life is setting it up doesn't mean you're
Yeah, you're not going to
graceful.
stumble. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow. And I think we don't have to get into all of it, but as time has gone on, you guys have discovered that there's past life connection there, and there's so much depth to what it is that you guys share.
Which I'm curious, like, have you two experienced any sense of, like, what was the type of wattage you experienced in your meeting? And
Yeah,
in
I'll
unfolding,
start
and
this.
how did you deal with it gracefully and ungracefully?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I was gonna go there, but
story.
Michelle was moving us on.
Well, we're back.
Yeah,
Here we
Larissa's
are.
not gonna let us move on.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I would say energetically, the particulars of that exact story are the exact same. The first time I was dating somebody, Michelle was dating somebody, mutual friend group. But the first time I saw Michelle, there was this huge wattage increase, and I wasn't a spiritual person. I was an atheist at that time. It was a feeling that I hadn't experienced before, and so I didn't understand it. I didn't know what to do with it. It was super strong. It was novel, intense, and like what I would try to put words on it later. It was like that being. I felt like beingness of a person. I think for the first time in a way that I hadn't ever before, and it was like they're important to me. Like it's just. And it was kind of like it was confusing, you know. And it was like you're going to be significant. And then I was on a balcony. Michelle was down below, so that I go down and meet her. I remember. I think I asked my friend Lindsay. I'm like, "Who's that?" You know. And so then we go down and meet. And
all that feeling before you even exchange words.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
And then I met Michelle's partner at the time, and I just remember thinking like, no, like that's not right. Like,
No.
but not in a way like I'm gonna, you know, like it wasn't like a malicious no. It was just still a confused no.
Yeah.
And then a couple years went by. We became great friends. There was this huge friend group that coalesced together, and you know, Michelle and I just got closer and closer and closer, and we each got married to these people that we were with at the time. Experienced the same kind of problems and unfulfillments in those marriages, and eventually, I just couldn't ignore it anymore. And it was like I was so brave, like to your point, Larissa, you're able to do things. You're able to act bravely in a way that's out of character and out of capacity for what you are normally capable of doing. And I just like knew. At a minimum, I must break up with my wife. I must get a divorce. Like at a minimum, like this is clear to me. Like you, Michael. Like I had those moments where, oh, this life that I know is possible for me, I feel limited by. I was in moments where I'm limited by this situation. So I was like, I knew that Michelle wasn't, you know, as happy as in the same boat, and so then I just like, you know, declared, I love you. This is crazy. And she says I pitched this like a business plan, which I probably did. That was my fumblingness of like, listen, you're like this, I'm like this, you know, we could, you know. So that started a very painful process of like, you know, us getting together was an argument because two relationships had to unfold to a very tight friend group. Like the four of us were close friends, you know, and it destroyed a friend group. And so like, you know, we spent the last, you know, we got vilified. We lost some friends over this. And it's just like, you know, you can't blame somebody for like, how do I say no to that? To, you know, like to your point, Larissa, it's like you know, it's a soul violation to say no. How do
Yeah.
you communicate that to somebody in our, 3D world of human emotions where we have a very black and white binary on, how to act in right relationship to other? Anyway, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
um, we eventually here we are, and it's been joyous and traumatic, and we never wanted to have kids, and now we have Murphy and another one on the way, and that's just
Hmm.
like whatever's unfolding through us is unfolding now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I
Mm.
think that's my version.
Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing all that. And like, it brings up for me, like now, after everything I've been through and we've been through, it's like we kind of and recently it's been happening, we find ourselves in this seat of like supporting people through their relationship, like trials and tribulations. And a lot, it's been happening a lot lately of people very strikingly, like people coming to me and telling me about what's going on in their hearts. And I'm like, oh, this was where I was like 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And now I have some wisdom from my direct experience that can apply to this. And something I've really come to is, if I see somebody in a relationship and I can see that it's really dysfunctional, I will never say to that person, this person's bad for you and you need to get out of that. Because it's like, I know that everybody is going through something for a reason. And it's like, you have to go through this alchemical process that sometimes involves difficult situations. And then things like that, where it's like, okay, you're going to break up. And sometimes it's like the heart desire like has to move the energy. And if you don't have the wherewithal to like do it gracefully, sometimes that leads to things like people cheating on their partners or doing something reckless that then breaks the relationship. And it feels so important to me to hold this stance of non-judgment. And it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, it's just your heart seeking what it needs. And you like, stumbling through it. And so
Yes.
it's obviously it's a lot easier if you're not, in the partnership and feeling the heartbreak. But yeah, it feels really important for all of us as human beings to just let go of the judgment and be like, okay, we're all just trying to find our connection to love in our different ways.
Amen. And that was
Mhm.
exactly the fault line on which I either made or lost friends. Like I am that way. I was going
Yeah.
to be a therapist for a while so I could just hold non judgmental space for people.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's like people's default culturally conditioned reaction to a situation like this is immediate judgment versus
Mhm.
curiosity, questions like, well, what happened? You're assuming, again, we're bumbling along doing the absolute best I possibly can in an overwhelmingly expanded energetic situation.
Mhm.
And yeah, and so the friends that got that are the ones I still have and I'm close to, and
Mhm.
the ones that don't,
Yeah.
I mean, the
I
friends
need.
that didn't ultimately want to understand or ask questions were the ones that ended up
That's true.
walking away.
Uh-huh.
And that's fine. Like I don't hold any ill will or judgments against them for doing what they needed to do. Um,
Mhm.
you know, for me, I didn't have quite the bolt of energy upon meeting him.
Mhm.
But it was just like building over time. We created a friendship that was very undeniably soul connection. I mean, oftentimes at like gatherings with friends, like people would, oh, Miss Michelle and Zach are off having a conversation again. And it was not, for
Yeah.
me anyways, it took a long time for it to be like, oh, is there something romantic here? Like I
Yeah.
truly was like, I just think that he's so awesome and I could have like a conversation with him for
Yeah.
hours, and we had so many things that we connected on and had in common. And admittedly in my partnership, it wasn't as deep. She was a great
Mhm.
person and we had other things in common. But we didn't quite have that depth, and that was
Yeah.
very important to me. And
Yeah.
that eventually started to kind of be like, what's going on? I think maybe these emotions are here. He then pitched himself as a as a viable.
What are you saying? You want to invest?
And it was very, I mean, for lack of a better word, I'm just like, it was traumatic to like even feel those emotions, knowing that they weren't right, that I shouldn't
Mhm.
be feeling them, and that this was not okay. And I spent a lot of time trying to force myself out of those emotions. And
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and then the loss of friendships, and ultimately like I spent a lot of time really like disliking myself, and there was a lot of
Mhm.
self-hatred, and coming out of that for the course of the last 5 or 6 years has been a long journey, and just like accepting, forgiving myself.
Yeah.
I've personally come a long way into forgiving myself for all of that. But I will say that this is like it was and still is undeniable, and I feel like the proof for me is where we are today in our lives, and like it's I don't even have words to like explain what that is. And I know that for me, coming into my spirituality and continuing to be on that journey, he is there on that ride with me, even though there are times where I kind of have to like drag him along a little bit. Not as much anymore. In the beginning, maybe a little bit. But he's there with me, and it's
Right.
allowed me to do that in partnership. And like you said, Larissa, I want to be able to do that while being loved and supported by somebody who sees me for all of the things that we could work together in figuring out what it means to be in partnership, also navigating spirituality. um and it wasn't graceful how it came to us either, so but here we are.
Yeah.
Mhm.
God, that
Yeah.
is so beautiful to hear from both of you. I'm
Yeah.
serious because
Thank you.
I think it can be rarely are conversations about love had like this.
Mhm.
You know, because people can stay if we just tell the layer of like what happened, like what would the movie look like if I saw the movie of you meeting? But that the richness of love stories is really the internal experience that goes along with that of like, how'd you deal with the wattage? How did it make you feel? What did you have to summon? What did you question? Where was your mind putting up like nuclear level resistance to the body's knowing? How do you reckon with that with the constellation of your life at that time? Does it have a sense of threatening your identity, your sense of ethics or morality, your programming about who it's acceptable to love or not? You know, these questions are um,
Mm.
or span everyone's lived experience, and one of the things that's so amazing about love as a power is that love tests every single boundary and belief we create. And it's like, but can you love here? Can you love in this way? Can you love in this moment? Can you love in places where you thought you were never capable of loving? And that many people embark on that sense of diving into the bigness of love, often through parenting or through their own spiritual journey, sometimes in their partnership. But then when you layer all of the scales of life together and to say, do you want to do
Mm.
this together?
Mm.
And like, we're totally gonna fall,
Mm.
and not in the fun way at times. Um,
Yeah.
but I want you to be a sovereign being, and I want to be a sovereign being, but I want to walk together
Mhm.
and
Right.
see how fun it gets to be.
Mhm. There's
Yeah.
a phrase from the Ringing Cedars books that she shares a lot of parables from like old Russia, like before the czars. And one of the things that she says is that back in those days, the proposal, the phrase that you would say in proposing love or marriage to somebody is, "Will you create a space of love with me?" And I really love that, and I felt that with Larissa, that it's like, oh, we're physically creating a space of love in this property that we're in, but it's like, oh, the seeing love is not like, oh, we have this incredible spark at the beginning, which we did, and we can share that part too. Um, but then it's like, oh, we're building a garden together. We're like tending these like life areas and like planting these seeds and like cultivating love as like this ongoing like practice of thriving. It's something that's got to be gardened, you know. And like I think staying oriented to that has been like, oh, we're just, you know, regardless of like when when things get hard or we feel disconnected or something like that, it's like we're both committed to the garden of our love together and all of the aspects of that. And that has just felt so steady from the beginning.
I fully agree. And like the purpose orientation and our individuated soul journeys, and then this like frigging lightning bolt that cracked through reality that changed my sense of like what is even happening here.
Yeah.
When we finally went on our first date, that it's like the wattage, the personal commitment, the purpose, those have all been this molecular structure that's just pulled on itself and asked us to grow. And any place it's asked me to grow immensely. And any place I've been rigid or resistant or controlling or afraid or anxious or rushing, any of those things, I've come back again and again is my love is bigger than whatever this condition is.
Yeah.
It's like, can I orient more to the bigness of my love than to needing to be right, to needing to feel, etc. And that has been for me personally, when we've had times where, and we can get into shadow power, and power literacy is part of our family culture. But that wattage and the inspiring level of sensation and feeling is like, can I summon more of myself to keep tending that rather than collapsing into whatever my momentary pain or trauma hole or whatever is. And that being in that practice to me is what spiritual development looks like in our partnership.
Yeah, if I could like paraphrase, I mean, I resonate with that because I think to me, it's when you're thrown into the right relationship, you often enter that as an individual that's got a strong ego, that's built a lot of control structures. You have your own defenses. You have your own maybe unaddressed anxiety, hangups, trauma, any of these things. And all that is just like a sun burning away. Like the relationship is the sun, and love is the sun burning all that stuff away and vaporizing it. So then maybe the other like response would be like, okay, there's no difference between me and this person. We must merge. When all my ego is obliterated, I've got to merge. Well, actually, no. What the sun burns away and reveals is who your true essence, your spiritual nature, your core, your soul, however you want to, whatever words you want to. And then it's like, so what are you going to do with that? And how often can you like operate from that place versus like all of your old stories and old, and you're constantly tested and you always want to go back to like what you knew before. And it's so hard to stay in contact with that core.
Yeah.
Totally.
Beautifully said.
I want to just speak to something that's coming up from all of this, which is, in our, in this whole practice of loving, it's brought a lot of contemplation for me of these different dimensions of what does it mean to be in a committed partnership like this. And there's the layer of this feeling that's really intense, like that sparking magnetic connection and erotic connection. And then it's like, and then building a business together. It's like we're running a home. We have to have systems and we got to project manage stuff together, and then we actually are working together as you are, and so it's like, okay, you got to figure out this work partnership. And so there's all these layers to it. And something that I've really felt a lot is the way that we've been cultivating this like, sovereignty and strong connection at the same time. And these aspects of it, it's making me want to go into somatica a little bit, which is Larissa did this training. I don't remember what year you did it.
2017, the year before we met.
Yeah.
Which was the end of the year. The end of that training is when I asked Michael to do the filming for the rebirthday. And the training was sex, relationship, and intimacy coaching training that I did, because in all of my explorations of power, I was like, God, I have so much I want to understand and explore in the realm of erotic power and what feels good and true for me in my own body and how I navigate this particular terrain of wattage, which is very fundamental to being in a human body.
Yeah. And so Larissa talking about that in the beginning of our relationship, I was like, oh, this is this is going to be something really healing for me to like be in contact with you, because I've experienced a lot of erotic energy blockages, and I can get more into that story if we want to. But then at a certain point in our relationship, Larissa said, you should go work with a somatica practitioner. He's not me, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
And what's literally is my, you know, we weren't married at the time, but my to-be wife is telling me, go work with the therapist basically and fall in love with them and practice that with somebody else so that you can then come bring it into our relationship. And I was like, well, what the fuck? Like, okay, if you think this is a good idea, we'll go for it.
Yeah.
And I did. And it was one of the most powerful healing things that I've ever experienced. And a lot of what it opened for me was this realization of like, there was stuff that I needed to work through. And there's something about the erotic energy that like all of us have. It's like our deepest wounding can get knotted up into the erotic material. And so then what is wanting to be expressed erotically can be, it's like something that needs to come out, but which is can be a transmutation of some dark, gnarly stuff, and depending on what your life experiences are. And I realized going through that, I was like, oh, it would not have been possible for Larissa to hold me through this, no matter what. Like, even if she, you know, because there's these stakes in the relationship, and it's like, oh, some material's coming up for me, and that's going to trigger you. And then we get into this like back and forth thing, and then it doesn't clear. And so working with somebody else who's like a trained practitioner, like they can just hold this neutrality, you know, like the therapist just holding this non-judgmental space to allow it to move. And then I'm like working through stuff on my own, and it's like, oh wow, I had to go through so much stuff by myself and with somebody else to then show up for this. And so it kind of exploded all of these notions of like, oh, you're supposed to provide everything for me as my partner. You're supposed to like sexually satisfy me in every way. You're supposed to love me perfectly in every condition, and you're supposed to like show up in all these ways. And it's like, nobody can do that.
Can you explain the somatica?
Yeah, I was
like
going to
what-
ask the same
yeah,
thing.
grounding everybody that's listening. What does that entail, and what does that look like?
Yeah, and your
Yeah.
experience. Yeah.
Yes. So I can share about my experience training in somatica. Somatica is a sex, relationship, and intimacy coaching methodology developed by Celeste Hirschman and Danielle Harrell. And it is a coaching approach to, and this is my language, not their language. It's a coaching approach to dealing with the somatic, emotional, and electrical experiences of being in our own erotic energy, in our erotic energy with another human being, and dealing with experiences that range from turn on to disappointment to rejection to initiation to initiating things to speaking what one desires. Because every time we're working with our erotic energy, our wounding and our grief will come up. The times we have been rejected, the times we have felt unfulfilled, the ways that we don't even know what we desire because we've never felt safe to, because we've been programmed that our sexuality is unsafe or that we're dangerous or that our whatever, all the things. And because I was bedridden for like the end of my 20s all the way up through my mid to late 30s for most of the time.
Wow.
I was like 87 during my 30s. You know, I was mostly bedridden, mostly alone, mostly in my apartment in a frigging like dojo of trying to heal myself. So I wasn't out like in the dating scene and having all these experiences. And what I realized through that whole 9 months of training was, well, also it was so much better than dating because there was like actual capacity being built, of how do you find, like, one, what's your relationship to your own body and your own energy? How do you recognize what turns you on? What's even on the menu of turn-ons? How do you embody that? How do you verbalize that? What's the difference between your embodiment and what you say? How can you be with someone else's wounding if it triggers your own wounding? because it's so tender. And we just don't have great cultural role modeling in our storytelling, in movies, in books. We don't have guides of how to deal with the magnitude of this wattage.
Yeah, or even a language for even a language that can hold the nuance. We don't have that either.
Precisely.
Yes.
And
Right.
it's like, what's the difference between being romantic and being passionate, and being in like domination or submission things? And then for me, in the unfolding of my work around power literacy and shadow power and power that serves the whole, I have a whole different understanding now of how I relate to my erotic power, and when are my erotic impulses coming from my shadow that I don't want to fuel versus coming from my power that serves the whole that I actually need to honor and need to make voice for. So it's like illuminating, as with any field, but interestingly, erotic power is often the arena where people who come do the power assessment through my work have like the most blind spot. Not even the most active shadow. They're just like, what is even happening over there? Like,
Yeah.
what's the terrain? What does it look like? What's going on? Because we've been coded to orient to success. Success equals money. Money equals house. Money equals stability. Money equals family. Money equals vacations. Maybe we talk about sex. Maybe we don't. Maybe we get to enjoy being in our bodies. Maybe we don't, but probably not, because you have to keep working and your body's not going to feel good at work. So keep working and go get that money. It's like there's a whole gestalt that, well, what if we actually get to feel good?
Yeah.
What if
And-
I don't base my whole life on self-violation?
Mhm.
What
And
if
I
that's
love-
actually not even possible in my
I
life
love
design?
tracing the roots of Christianity as an ideology, even if how it affects you today, even if you are not a Christian person. So, like, exactly, like we don't even understand erotic power as a thing because of the roots of Christian confessional and having to block all that
Yes.
away. And so that is just like hanging over all of culture right now, even if you're not necessarily a Christian person.
Well, and
Yeah.
like on top of that, then you have a lot of the issues of the world deriving from men's issues that nobody wants to talk about because
Mhm.
they don't deserve it or something like that. But like a lot of that stemming in that direction as well. But to your point, Larissa, you said this is one of those things that when I'm working with my clients, it's like, oh, what's even over there? And I, as somebody who is actively working on healing and seeking ways to improve. And, I'm realizing in this conversation, oh my gosh, that's another deep well that like I have not even touched on. And it's like,
Mm.
oh, 100, that makes sense. There is so much triggered in that space. And I have not even thought really to go there.
Mm. Okay.
So next
Cool.
up on the list.
Amazing. Okay. Yeah, this is opening a door. This is great. This is the juicy stuff. To take it to like the other end of the most concrete of what is somatica, in the actual practice of it, it looks like doing a whole bunch of exercises that are all your clothes on, no kissing, but that's the only hard boundary rule. And then it's like
Well, the live
touches.
boundaries are always negotiated.
And then it's a process
people.
of like you're talking with the practitioner, and it's in this kind of courtship dance. We're very different from therapy. The practitioner is voicing what their desires and their fears and like everything that's happening for them as much as you are. So it's like
Wow.
you're in this like dialogue that's like, oh, we're voicing and surfacing our mutual field of desire and emotion that's coming up.
And beyond
Wow.
those like base rules that Michael named, the reason there aren't like fixed rules is because so life is inherently relational. But in all of our educational settings, we're taught in rule-based format. And it's like relationship is dynamic.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
emergent. It is based in sensing. And to sit in the seat of a practitioner, which I have done, whoever's showing up, just like in your own partnership, you feel one way on a given day with your partner, and then
Right.
circumstances are different. And so always tending the field, always tending what's actually there. So a session, yeah, sure, your clothes might be on. It might be about like sex and intimacy, and you might be crying for 45 minutes while someone pets your back. It's not like
So that's what I was gonna
that's
what I was
what
gonna
can
say.
happen.
Yeah. So what I was gonna say off of that is like when I was doing this work, there was some stuff that were like pretty wild, like kind of taboo sex things that were being role played. The single most triggering thing that we did was role playing disappointment. There's a
Sure.
practitioner like pretending to be my mom and saying like I'm disappointed in you, and that was the hardest thing
Wow.
to work through, which I would not have expected. Like it didn't present that was so hard until we were doing it, and I was like, oh, this is a deep one for me.
Interesting.
This is
So-
kind of blowing my mind because I had not heard of this
No,
subfield
me
at all
either. I
until
have had
today.
no introduction, understanding that this was a thing at all.
Yeah.
Well,
and
what
it's
I
very
love
funny,
is like, you know, and the worlds unite, telepathy and magic and business, and that the it's so awesome because what I have found is that people who are open in the spiritual realm are more likely to be open to, oh, well, what is going on with my erotic power?
Yeah.
Because if I can like
yeah, it just
if
makes
I
a
can
general
like
openness.
see synchronicities, and if I can experience energy in these ways, or if I have out of body experiences, or if I use psychedelics, it's like, well, that's just another flavor of wattage.
Right.
What happens with me over there?
Mhm.
Right. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So going off of that, you know, as I've kind of opened my erotic cultivation just in myself, just practicing with my own body and opening these energy channels, I've gotten to a place, and it's kind of gotten to this place for me where there's this magic combination of erotic cultivation, plant medicine work, and energy martial arts. And bringing those things together, of having an understanding of how the energy moves through the body and being able to move in a certain way to open the flow of the energy through the meridians, through acupuncture meridians. And then pairing that with opening the erotic body and the plant medicines to help open the door is a very powerful kind of cultivation that begins to open. And what I've found through that is Larissa described something doing her somatica training the first time of her and another friend of ours.
Oh,
who's
can I
just,
describe the snake?
yeah, you go ahead.
So
Describe
we
it.
were sitting. So when I did somatica, like
With our dear friend who's a
12,000.
magic witch who also officiated our wedding.
Laura
Okay.
Griffiths, thank you
Mhm.
so
So
much.
this is, you were on the other side, you're not the practitioner in this case. You
We're
were.
Yes,
students.
they're
We're
doing,
students.
they're doing a teacher
Okay.
training. They're
Yeah,
doing
we're
a
in, like-
practitioner training.
There are
Yeah.
like 100 students in the room, and
Okay.
we're both highly energetically sensitive people, not sitting right next to each other, but a couple people away. And I don't, you know, even though I've mentioned having flashes of seeing things, it's not like that happened all the time in my life at that point. So this was quite rare. So I'm sitting in the room. It's the second of 4 5-day immersions, and I'm sitting in the room and I see a 5-foot tall energy cosmic snake with its mouth open, just like sinuously moving through the room, eating people's lives. In that time, someone crashed their car, people got divorced, identities stolen, you know, couples forming and reforming. And I looked at Laura, I was like, "Can you see that?" I'm like, "Do you see that snake?" And she was like, "I see that snake." And what that taught to me in that moment, because I had what I came to understand was a Kundalini awakening starting in 2016 all the way through 2017, which I didn't have language for.
Right.
I was just like, I'm overwhelmed. This is a lot. Like, what is happening? I kind of feel like I'm going crazy. And the book
Yep.
Spiritual Emergency by Stanislav Grof was very helpful for me in that. And I was like, oh, this is what is happening. Because it does feel like an emergency. Oh my God, what flavor of madness is this? But that I learned in that moment that the Kundalini energy, I was like, oh, this needs to be united with the heart, because the cosmic impulse in all of us of want
Mhm.
is not connected to morality or
Mhm.
consequences or impacts to other people's lives. And And like, as your story so beautifully demonstrates, that you were weighing the bigness of the soul recognition, not just the want. Like the want was there, but like, Zach, God, I could just start crying right now, and choosing not to, in you having that recognition of Michelle and summoning in yourself to like, I'm gonna go down. Because it takes so much to knowingly approach someone, when you're aware of that wattage field. Just like, great job, buddy. Like,
Thank you.
so proud of you. Like, look at what you create. Like that one choice, that one choice is how you got here. And that, like, life is constantly asking that of us, where it's like, we like to fixate on our fears. Sorry, this is a side side quest.
It's all about
but
side quests.
It is all about the side quest. That we often can fixate on the things we fear, the things that aren't going well, or our shadows, and like how big and scary they can be. But the thing that really scares us is our own greatest power, our own greatest turn on, our own greatest desires, and for us to show up and be like, I need to be more to meet that moreness that I want to call into my life. And that is like this story, like all the forms of courtship that we've been talking about through here, that like, whoa, like, wow, I do have more in me, or like, fuck, my knees are going to tremble, or I'm going to say the dumbest thing ever. But like, I'm going to try because it's worth it. It's worth trying.
Yeah, I love it. I think.
Thank you. It's not often we're applauded for our, unification. And so
We should be more.
Yeah.
thank you.
And it's
Thank
like,
you.
Appreciate it.
also recognizing, yes, the pain of the relationships that ended, and like, look what you've created because you followed that courageous yes.
Yeah, I often say it's the greatest achievement of mine, the greatest thing I've ever done, the bravest thing I've ever done. And, just because it's always going to be the thing that made the rest of my life happen and unfold in the way it's already beginning to beautifully unfold with you as my partner. And I think
Hey.
Now
we'll
I'm
leave,
fine.
we'll leave it.
Me
We'll,
too.
we'll leave it right there. We'll take a break, and we'll come back for part 2.
Okay, y'all, we're going to take a quick breather here. We'll return with part 2 of this conversation in our next episode. This is where the shadows come out to play and we air some dirty laundry, because a soul level love isn't free from the shitty parts. You won't want to miss it. We'll talk to you soon.